Ravina ma'am will share, and after that, Pritika ma'am will share about her ongoing research for grounding emancipatory interest through critical action research, and next using critical reflections practice in art ethnography by Niroj Dal sir. And finally, because all of us are in one level, they are students of Professor Balchandra Loital, and he will be sharing why critical reflections is needed in postgraduate research in connections of our research research ideas. So this is how we go. So now we have to, all of us, we have to think for a while now. So this is for 3 or 4 minutes exercise. So I kindly request all of you to take a moment just to recall one of your times that you perform at your best in your institution. So that in your profession, so that may be any tasks, maybe the personal or maybe social, or must preferably be this professional tasks. So you just remember that. So what is the best? So sometimes you might have received best award, or sometimes your colleagues have praised you as a best teacher or best educator or maybe best supervisor in a higher level. So just recall one particular specific moment, and then whenever you recall that specific moment, and then think based on the following questions. So what made you think that this was the best? So what are the reasons behind this event it became a best? And then what are the assumptions that underlie such best practices or the best moment? So what are the assumptions behind it? So the next one is, who told you that this was the best? Whether you are convinced with yourself or your stakeholder told that this is the best, and why or what made them to tell that is the best? So are there any hidden reason or hidden interest so that they are referring you as a best, or you are referring yourself as a best? So what do you think that? Or which of these tasks had some drawbacks or still have, although you named this as the best, so do you see there are some limitations or there are some drawbacks in your that particular performances? And if you have to repeat the same or similar tasks again, so how do you do that? Or since that is the best, or do you perform that as it is, or you have seen several drawbacks and then you'll improve it? So I kindly request you to rethink on this particular event and write your observations in the chat. And then if any one of you is interested to share, you can just unmute and share it. So any two of you can get opportunities, so due to the time constraint. Okay, you are welcome.
5 minutes.
Yeah, so this is okay. Yes, I think some of, okay, sure, okay, please. Yeah, sorry, the name is not there. Is a BIP health minister. So do you want to share? Do you want to share? Okay, sorry.
Priska
ma'am, please.
Priska ma'am, please.
Sir, I don't know how it came through VIP minister, but the thing that you've raised is, I have multiple events that where I came across the fact that I was pretty much praised about my practice. But one thing that I remember, which I can relate to the educational experience that I had, is one of the students after a class came up to me and told me that, ma'am, if you become professor someday, I will be your student. So that was a remark that was pretty much that moved me, and that made me think that maybe the practice that I undertook to be a teacher, which was before joining MPhil, that was pretty much before joining MPhil, where I had no experience of other practices that I should have been doing to make them understand better. But even that practice came out to be pretty good for that particular student. So if I have to consider that the fact that it was my realization, not someone else's, that made me think that it was something good that I had done for the students. And the thing that maybe that was maybe I had to reform that practice to be best suited for others in the group as well. So that is one thing that I feel is a drawback, that not everyone in the group came up to me and told me that. Maybe there were people who may not have liked that process or the technique used. So maybe I would reform that practice of mine to be better suited for everyone in the class, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Priska ma'am. Just one interactions with you. So have you ever thought that why did he or she say in that way, or does he or she have some interest, for example, so getting your support or getting some additional support so that he or she is praising you, although you are not performing you. So did you see the any hidden interest or assumptions so behind this event?
Sir, I don't really relate it to any other interest that the person had. That was purely, I felt that was purely from his own personal view, sir. Because I have not seen something like that in most of our students, because we don't have such kind of affiliation to promote or to pass or fail someone. So it was purely based upon his own personal view, sir, I believe.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Priska ma'am, for sharing your very insightful event. Now, we want to listen one more event. So you can also write in the chat, but I think we have not received anything in the chat. So any one of you, please.
Lakshman Tirua.
Okay, Lakshman Tirua, please.
He has written Namaste, all of sir and ma'am. Are you sharing something?
Namaste, sir. Namaste, ma'am. No, sir, I'm just a passive listener. I don't have any such agenda. Yeah.
Okay. No. There is no agenda, but you might share anything related to the topic.
PhD student, just listener. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any
one of you?
Any one of you, apart from us, apart from the presenter, any of you, any other friends? You can also open your video as well. It's good to, because this is workshop and showing face is very, I mean, it is good to show you that you are still alive there. I'm just joking. Being alive is very, very important in life.
Okay, Bal sir, if not now, I should move on now. It's
please.
Okay, thank you. So please keep on thinking on these questions, and then perhaps we can discuss in some other occasions. So we are in the same boat in the field of education. So now what we realize that this is also one of the exercise for reflections, more than that, the critical reflections. So it's not what made our actions best, or even within the best our practices, are there any limitations? So sometimes somebody could have said this is the best, or for other group of people, so that may be very, very bad. So based on some reference or the thinking point or the point of view, so there are different aspects. So now what I want to share, even in my study and in my university as a faculty or as a PhD scholars, what I came to know, we have a lot of beliefs, and then we have a lot of convictions that we hold. But normally we as a practitioner, those who are not aware with the critical reflexivity, so we develop a kind of conclusion from our very selected observations or from our very selective narratives. So, and then that is more self-generative kind of narratives without being aware with its root cause, as the first keynote speakers, Balsar has mentioned today. So the actions are visible, but why that actions has been made by a particular individual due to his or her deeply rooted beliefs or convictions. And then, so there are two very important ideas that I came through. One is the reflective loop, and the other is the mental mode. So sometimes what happens, we describe, so this is a kind of circular process. We select some specific data or some specific narrative, some specific vignettes, and we add personal meaning into that, and we make assumptions. So based on our interpretations, and we draw the conclusions, and we say that, for example, Nepali teachers are not good, or this is not a good university. So with a very selected narratives, although there could be several successful stories, because whenever we hear that people sometimes say that in Nepal there is no higher education institutions, or if we have to get a quality education, we must go abroad or a Western university. So this is also might be a conclusions derived from a very selected narratives or making assumptions or interpretations. And after that, so there are a lot of mental models, that is a deeply seated assumptions, generalizations, images that influence how we understand the world and how we act. So as a teacher educator or as a researchers working with school teachers or community members, what we realize that, so rather than talking only about visible actions or trying to change the outer behavior, first of all, we have to understand their deeply rooted beliefs or deeply seated assumptions. And then if we engage them, or if we engage ourselves, so in the process of critical reflections, so and then we try to understand our strength and our limitations and contextual understanding. So there are, as Peter also has mentioned in his several their publications, that multiple forms of knowing. So sometimes we come to know through our cultural practices, sometimes we come to know through our artistic expressions. So this is very, very important. So this is mental, we have to understand the structure of this mental model and we have to act on it. So for that, I have referred the ideas of Brookfield of critical reflections. So where the Stephanie Brookfield has mentioned that critical reflections is a matter of stance and dance. So there are a lot of experimentation also. We do not have a very straightforward approaches for critical reflections. No one can provide ready-made templates to for the critical reflections. So sometimes we practice and sometimes we act, sometimes we raise questions on our assumptions, we become aware with different false consciousness, and then we keep on modifying that practices. So it is a process of inquiry. So it is a constant formations and reformations, but it is always open to revision. So now what I want to share, the recently published one book chapter edited by Taylor and Taylor. So I have written, we collaboratively develop one stories here. And then, so let me read out this story and how we engage students in critical reflections. Students of this very basic level students. So there is a shop nearby Vivek's house. Vivek needed a pencil. He went to the shop and asked the shopkeeper for a pencil. He asked the price of the pencil. The shopkeeper said that one pencil cost ₹40. Vivek was surprised. So Vivek said, "Is it 40 for a pencil? Last week I bought a pen for ₹20. The shopkeeper replied, "The price has increased." And then Vivek bought the pencil for ₹40. He thought that the shopkeeper had cheated him, and he complained to the police. The police came to the shop and saw the bill. The cost price of a pencil for the shopkeeper was ₹20. There is a provision for making a maximum profit of 20% on stationery item. The police instructed the shopkeeper and returned the money to Vivek, and now warned him or her not to cheat again. Now look at these stories. So here we are not only discussing about the profit and loss, and then so other kind of, this is a very straightforward mathematical activities. Here we are talking about this rule, law, that is why we call ethical market. And we are also making aware to the students that if they are cheated, they have to go to this police or the structure that the government has. And then there is a questions in 3 and 4. If you see, do you think that Vivek's decision of complaining to the police was good? Why or why not? So if we engage our students in such kind of activity from the early ages, then we'll produce very critical citizen. Because one of the aim of national education is producing very critical citizen, ethical citizens, but we do not see that ideas has been translated in our classroom activities. I think these kind of activities will help us to engage them in critical reflexivity. The reason that I brought this example is that sometimes people say that critical reflexivity can be done for adult only, or for the people who are mature people only. But what we realize in our activities, it can be done from very early ages, even in preschools, from grade 1, 2, and 3. But the level of activity is based on their context. So this is what I want to share. Now, I think we should move ahead now. So we have planned, so we will be here so for 90 minutes. Now the next ideas is will be shared by Harsha Bahadur Chand, using critical reflections as a process of coming to know in action research. Harsha sir, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Namaste, everyone. It's me, Harsha Bahadur Chand. Sir, screen share has stopped.
Okay, please give me permission to share the screen. So I'll be sharing the screen throughout the end. Please, Harsha sir.
Okay. It's me, Harsha Bahadur Chand, and I will share how critical reflection is used in my research as a process of coming to know. Next slide, sir. And my research, action research, was about conceptual understanding of undergraduate students in real analysis, and the objective was to develop conceptual understanding of undergraduate students in real analysis. Here I will start from the poem. The poem is about how critical reflection is used in my research, from selection of the problem to envisioning the future pedagogy for teaching mathematics. The poem is like this. Where light is present, shadow is inseparable. I improved my practice as CR made me able. Neither only at the end, nor only at the start. In my research journey, CR is at the heart. CR opened the window. I could see problem from there. I deconstructed my practice, which helped me to reach here. Plants and practice upwarded like a blooming flower. To envision future pedagogy, CR gave me a power. Here, the first stanza is about that critical reflection cannot be separated from action research, like shadow cannot be separated from the object. And it helped me, it made me able to improve my practice. The second stanza states that I did not use critical reflection in a discrete way. That is not only at the end and not only at the start, but it was used continuously in the whole my research journey. Therefore, critical reflection was at the heart of my research. The third stanza is that I was not conscious about the problematic situation before I got involved into reflection. But when I got involved into critical reflection, it opened the window of my mind, and I became able to see problematic situation. As a result, I deconstructed my practice of teaching real analysis through critical reflection, and that helped me to reach in this position, or to reach in the improved form. The last stanza is that like a blooming flower, when I implemented lesson plans during implementation of the action plan, a critical reflection helped me to develop as well as to improve plan and practice. And critical reflection gave me a power to envision the pedagogy for teaching higher level abstract mathematics like analysis and abstract algebra. Next, sir. In this way, I used critical reflection from problem identification of problematic situation to envisioning of the future pedagogy. And this slide is indicating that I used critical reflection mainly in 4 places. That is, through the critical reflection, I became conscious of the problematic situation. The next one is that I deconstructed my teaching approach through the critical reflection. Third one is that I improved everyday lesson plan and practice during the implementation of the action plan. And finally, I envisioned pedagogy to teach real analysis that can address cognitive and affective dimensions. And in this way, I used critical reflection in these places, and I will describe in detail in next slides. And how I became conscious about problematic situation is described here. In the first 4 years of teaching real analysis, I didn't care about the student performance. How thinking that my teaching is good and students are not or hard working to get the result of my expectation. However, during the 5th year of teaching, I reflected on my teaching and I reflected on the students' performance, and I asked myself several questions. For example, sir, previous slide. For example, why students are performing poorly? What are the factors that behind that poor performance, and who was responsible for that? How much I was responsible behind the poor performance of students? And by asking these questions to myself, I realized that something is wrong in my teaching. Therefore, I planned for action research. Next. I used critical reflection for deconstructing my teaching as well. And for this, I used lenses of social constructivism. And I found that my teaching was dominated by lecture method. Then I asked myself several questions. For example, what I taught in the classroom. It means what activities I conducted in the classroom, how I conducted such activities, and why I taught students in that particular way. Through these questions, I came to know that there were several my assumptions that lead me to follow the lecture method. My assumptions were that students are passive receivers of the knowledge. Me as a teacher, a source of knowledge, and my duty is to transmit mathematical content from my head to students' head. And my another belief was that if I present mathematical content sequentially, then student can learn best. Because of these assumptions, I was using lecture method. Then again, I searched why such assumptions were developed on me. And then I go back into my student life, and I realized that when I was at bachelor and master's level, I was taught by the lecture method. In this way, in Nepal University, especially I was a student of Tribhuvan University during bachelor and master level. And because of the culture of teaching real analysis in Nepal universities, my assumptions were developed, and that ultimately led me to lecture method. Therefore, I decided to reconstruct my pedagogical approach by inquiry-based learning approach, integrating GeoGebra and drawing. Next slide, sir. In addition to this, I used critical reflection during the implementation of my action plan also. For example, at the end of each day teaching, I questioned myself what I taught in the classroom, how I taught, why I taught in that way, and what can I do to improve my practice for the next day. In this way, I planned, I prepare lesson plans of every day with the help of critical reflection in one side. And in addition to this, I reflected upon the students' activities where I observed that students improved their understanding and they developed their confidence. In this way, during the implementation as well, I use critical reflection in these two levels. Next slide, sir. Finally, transformations occurred because of the critical reflection in students' assumptions, my assumptions, as well as my practice as well. For example, I engaged my students to reflect upon their roles as a student and their view about knowing mathematics. And I noticed that there is shift in the students' assumption that first of all, they used to think that their role is simply to memorize mathematical definitions and to recall them in the examinations. But they changed their assumption, that is, they changed their view towards learning, and their new assumption is that role of student is an active learner who constructs mathematical knowledge. In addition to this, students started that they developed their level of confidence from they can do nothing to they can do everything with the if they get help of the teacher. In this way, critical reflection helped students as well. In addition to this, critical reflection helped me to shift in my beliefs regarding the role of teacher as well as role of student. For example, role of teacher is shifted towards the like involved gardener, where role of teacher is to facilitate, not transmit mathematical content, but to facilitate in the construction of subjective mathematical knowledge. In addition to this, my belief regarding learning changed. My initial belief was that student can learn best if I transmit mathematical knowledge in a silenced classroom. But it was changed that student can learn best if they got opportunity of creating subjective mathematical knowledge, if they get opportunity of group work, and if they get opportunity of constructing multiple representations of mathematical concepts. In this way, because of critical reflection, these shifts occurred. Similarly, I envisioned pedagogy for teaching mathematics that can help students in cognitive as well as affective domain through the help of critical reflection. Thank you, and I invite Rabina Maharjan ma'am to continue.
Thank you so much, Harsa sir. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rabina Maharjan, head teacher of TERSD-2022 Secondary School and visiting faculty of Kathmandu University. And recently, I have completed my MPhil in STEAM education from Kathmandu University, and currently, I am finalizing my dissertation report. Today's presentation is also based on the critical self-reflection I have done in different phases of my dissertation research. I have divided my presentation in 3 phases, before, during, and after the research. Let me begin my presentation by sharing how the critical self-reflection has given birth to my research. I was a good student in my school days, but I don't think I never did 100% in the written examination. Still, today also, if I have to sit in a written examination, I think I will not be able to reflect all my knowledge, skill, and attitude in exam paper in given period of time. So when I started my career as a teacher, I often encountered a student who get unable to perform in a way they are capable of in the written examination, and eventually I have to see their disappointed faces on the result day. And that gave me a deep dissatisfaction deep down in my heart, and I feel like I'm not doing justice to the students' learning by evaluating them only through the paper pencil test at the end of the session. And over the years, my inability of not doing 100% in the written examination, the disappointed faces of my student on the result day have become natural and normal things for me. And I used to think that it is so obvious and this is part of life. But After joining MPhil in STEM education and attending several sessions on informing, reforming, and transforming pedagogy by my facilitator, going through different theories and literature, I realized and I started to critically reflect on the taken for granted assumption and beliefs of myself. And I started to critically reflect on my own practices. And then I thought, as a head teacher, when today I hold the position of a head teacher in a community school, if I cannot do anything regarding this hegemonic assessment system prevailing in our education system, then what is the use of the power, the knowledge, and the exposure that I have? So I thought of coming out of the taken for granted assumption of accepting the situation as it is, and I decided to leap into what I can do to overcome it. And portfolio-based assessment has become a ray of hope in this journey. And I thought of transforming the assessment system in my school by adopting portfolio-based assessment through participatory action research. And why did I choose participatory action research? There is a reason. This methodology allows me to take my team along with me. This methodology, participatory action research, compelled me to delegate my power to my colleague and empower them to lead the transformation and the reformation taking place in my school. So I have chosen participatory action research for this research, and my research has begun. So next slide.
Slide, next slide.
Sir.
Yeah, next slide. Yeah.
Okay, so my research has begun, and I plan to do the research, my participatory action research, in 2 cycles. First cycle was all about piloting the portfolio-based assessment in grade 2. I have taken only 1 class in the first cycle. And second cycle is all about institutionalizing the portfolio-based assessment or replicating the portfolio-based assessment to other grades, that is grade nursery to grade 3. I have taken only 1 class, and I have chosen to work with only 1 class teacher in my first cycle because I know that portfolio-based assessment is a new assessment practice for us, and shifting the practice of assessment from one-time evaluation to continuous evaluation was not easy, as it demanded extra time and effort from teacher. Therefore, working with one teacher in 1 class, and then replicating that practice, that reformed practice into all the other classes seemed wiseful and meaningful. That's why I have conducted first cycle in grade 2 only, and after the successful completion of my first cycle with the revised plan, I have conducted my second cycle, and this was the real challenge. I have worked with 9 class teachers parallelly, and letting them work simultaneously and at the same pace was nothing but an uphill battle for me. And then I encountered different level of motivation of my teacher. Some of the teachers were highly motivated, and they have taken the inclusion and the maintenance of students' portfolio as an integral part of their practice, integral part of their teaching and learning process. Whereas there were some of the teachers who were doing this project only to show me. And then at this point, I started questioning my own participatory approach. The participatory approach that I'm saying should have created an opportunity of collaboration, cooperation, and rapport building of me and my co-researcher equally. But so next slide. But I found that somehow I could not build this similar rapport to all my co-researcher. Vinod sir, next slide, please.
Next slide, please. Hello.
Yeah.
I'm shouting from here. Okay.
Okay, we got it, sir. So I realized that somewhere I failed to balance the power relationship with my co-researcher, because some of the co-researcher were still doing this job because a head teacher is saying, not because they really think it should be done. So what I did was I started spending more time with those participants informally and talking with them regarding their problems during the implementation of the lesson plan and all that. And this light chit chat between us has been successful in deconstructing their deep-rooted beliefs, and it has awakened their conscience. And finally, they have transformed their practices, and this led the research to the success. And finally, I have completed my research. Next slide, sir. At this point, I would like to revise the participatory action research once again. The participatory action research intends, literature has said that participatory action research intends to ensure co-construction of knowledge, empowerment, ownership, and sustainability within the participant. So at this point, when I'm saying that I have successfully completed my research, successfully implemented portfolio-based assessment in my school, my critical self-reflection will be focusing now on the sustainability of the change that took place in my school. Having said all this, I know institutionalizing portfolio-based assessment in a community school is not an overnight job. Rather, it is a continuous process. That's why now, after the research, after implementation of the portfolio-based assessment, I think the critical self-reflection is even more important for me. Therefore, I will be questioning my own practice. I will be reflecting critically in my own practices in many years to come in order to actually institutionalize a perfect assessment system in my school. Thank you so much. I would like to continue our workshop. To continue, I would like to invite Ms. Pritika from Kathmandu University itself.
Thank you, Ravina ma'am. Good afternoon to all the academicians who are participating and listening patiently in this workshop. Thank you for your presence. It means a lot to us and our work as well. My name is Pritika Basnet, and MPhil Scholar in STEM Education 2021 batch. By profession, I'm a nurse educator, and now, like my friends in previous sessions, I would also be sharing my experiences of my research journey with respect to critical self-reflection, foregrounding. The title is already passed. With respect to the foregrounding emancipatory interest through critical action research. I will be sharing how I use critical self-reflection to frame my overall research, and I will share some of my practices and how critical self-reflection guided to shape my practice as well. So to begin with, we have realized that critical self-reflection is one way to improve our own professional practice. In fact, it is used as a tool to frame my research and deconstruct my own teaching and learning practices. It helped me to build the base of my research, identify where the gap of the study is, and for this, I needed to regularly reflect my own practice by questioning it. Without questioning why, it did not have any implications for my research and also future practice. So I began to reflect my practices and question it, critique it, wearing the lens of Habermasian three knowledge constitutive interest. That is the technical interest, which justifies the mechanical learning process where the teachers control and manipulate the learning process. The second is the practical interest, which explains the communicative actions where the students need to be involved in open communication, trust, and mutual respect. And the another interest, emancipatory interest, which explores the notion of justice, equality, empowerment, and freedom. And my research began with the critical reflection, critical self-reflection of my own practice, my own values, and my own assumptions. Next slide. I begin to ask questions to myself, like what I did in my teaching and learning career, in which interest I was aligned, why did I do so, and what I valued the most. Where were my what were my prior assumptions? Why was I thinking the way I do? These questions to myself, after asking these questions to myself, I began to uncover my story. Next slide. Yeah, I began to uncover my own story. I revealed my pedagogical practices and associated assumptions one by one. Like being in the field of nursing education for more than 5 years, I came to know that my practices and beliefs were aligned towards the technical interest, because my teaching and learning were more like mechanical and instinctive, where I just focused on reproduction of knowledge. I just thought whatever I found in the textbook without relating it to the daily practices of the students. I was just informing and depositing the knowledge from my head to the student's head. In fact, I was following the trend, and the trend which I have witnessed through the entire learning journey, that is the teacher-centered pedagogy, is only one way to impart the knowledge, and the summative paper pencil test is one way to assess the students' achievement. This was my basic assumptions. Regarding teaching and learning, which I found after critically reflecting my own practice. However, a part of this practice that I was doing, aligned with technical interest, was a part of was guided by teacher-centered curriculum of my community of practice. When I got enrolled in Masters of Nursing degree in Thailand in 2014, I was exposed to student-centered learning practices such as reflective practices and active discussions in every classes, giving opportunity to speak up in classroom, and comprehensive assessment method. At that time, I thought of implementing those practices back to my country, my institute. And I returned back in 2016, started working in Nursing Institute. I tried to implement the same practice, but I could not change. My traditional practice did not change at all. And I was literally lecturing the students again. I could not find where the gap was. And later in 2021, I got chance to enroll in MPhil degree in STEM education, where I began to critically reflect my own practice and the nursing education system as well. I knew that there was the gap in the pedagogical knowledge, the competency to implement critical pedagogies, and also there was a gap in the traditional teacher-centered curriculum that we are implementing till now. I realized that I do not knew the basic theories of learning and the process of how people learn. How could I implement the contemporary pedagogies without knowing it detailedly? And so I realized this. And it took me one whole semester, like 6 months, where our teachers guided us to reflect our practices critically. During this time, I had to do reflective assignments and critique my practices based on different theories, and this enlightened me. These practices of critical self-reflections led me to realize that I need to shift my practice towards the practical and emancipatory interest as offered by Habermas, which argues that the teachers should adopt communicative actions going beyond the false consciousness, hegemonic ideology, providing ideal speech situation, developing critical subconsciousness among students, empowering learners to become independent learners for the future, and also envisioning the future. Nowadays, I have begun to reform my practices towards at least practical interest. Now, I would like to share one narrative, I think if time allows, which I critiqued based on the Habermasian interest. No need to change, because I wanted to share this one through the animated video, but somehow the animated video didn't work. So I will narrate this one. I remember the date somewhere around September 2021 when I was teaching sampling technique from the nursing research subject to the bachelor students. That was the period when I was trying to reform my teaching practice and moving beyond the technical interest. For teaching sampling technique, I decided to give group work with art integration, where they could work collaboratively to understand the meaning and technique of sampling in the research. I decided to stay passive and just facilitate them with the required resources. And after that, I created 8 groups out of 38 students in the class and gave each sampling technique. For example, one group I gave simple random sampling, the other group systematic random sampling, cluster sampling, and so on. Then on the next 2 days, the students came up with various ideas to present in the classroom and make their friends understand the concept of different sampling. The group, which consisted of 4 to 5 members, started the presentations respectively, and one of the group also did the drama. I encouraged them to use art-based methods to represent the sampling technique. So they did the drama, 5 minutes drama on snowball sampling, and that was great. That was great presentations. And there was, although there was a time limitations for the presentations, like 10 minutes for each group, only 1 or 2 members in the group presented. Not all the students in the class presented, and while others in the group stayed passive. And some of the friends were raising questions to understand the concept clearly, while others did not speak up. And I was passively listening to them and supporting wherever they did. And when I critique this practice, I was trying to move beyond when I critique this practice, wearing the lens of our maths, I was trying to move beyond my daily technical practice. I was encouraging my learners to involve in collaborative learning. And in addition, participating students in the classroom discourse in this case was the alignment of my practice towards the practical interest. And furthermore, the time constraints for the discussion was set in the mentioned class, in the explained class, and the students were not freely allowed to express their views, and that may be due to the time limitations. And again, this was I critique like this was because I was bound with the technical curriculum framework. Likewise, the students were not participating equally in the classroom discourse because only a few members in the group participated in or presented in that session, and the others, while others stayed passive. I tried to explore why the students did not participate, and I tried to explore on what is holding some students to participate in the group discussions and presentations. And interestingly, I found that the assumptions held by the students, it was like shocking to me. And some students mentioned like it is the teacher's job to explain these theories, not ours. And they feel that was the job of the teacher to explain, not theirs. So this led me to think that these assumptions, perception needs to be changed. And this is my story. And however, the whole nursing systems need to be changed, and I needed to explore. Next slide, sir. I needed to explore what other colleagues. Yes, this one. I needed to explore what other colleagues are doing and in their daily practices, and also explore their perceptions regarding student centers. So I began in my research. I began to explore these issues, what others think about the student center pedagogies, and this gave to birth to my research. Now, next slide. Now the way forward, and in the future, I would like to explore and empower the teachers by doing critical action research to empower nursing educators to adopt transformative pedagogy. Another is like there is the need to gain in-depth pedagogical knowledge. Like I reflected my practice, and the other nursing faculties and other practitioners need to reflect their practice in order to know where they are and what they know and why they know, why in part also. And also encouraging the continuous practices of critical self-reflection, because it is also one part of professional development program. And there is the need to revise the traditional teacher-centered curriculum in nursing institute. Thank you. Now I would like to invite Neeraj sir. Over to you, Neeraj sir.
Okay, thank you, Pritika ma'am. So I'm Neeraj Dal. So I'm here to share some of my critical reflective practices while using autoethnography as a method. So I want to greetings to all delegates and presenter as well as the participants who are here. So let me begin further. Okay, so some of the experts views that like critical self-reflection is all about the process of questioning own assumption, as well as presupposition and meaning perspectives. How we develop the meaning or how we question on the various features of the practices that are undertaking in our personal or professional life. So in this line, I do hope you already make some form of the understanding about what is exactly critical reflection is all about, and how you could able to recognize those practices and what might be the benefit for that particular perspective, like when you have some form of the critical self-reflection, and what exactly you can do or how you can able to incorporate it into your professional practices as well as in research. So here I try to bring some form of the lenses of critical reflective practices. So where we can view from the autobiography as a learner practice. So we can see our autobiography, our past and present experiences, from learner size views, from supposition of some of our theoretical like refinements, and from our collegiate experiences, and sometimes from the research experiences. So here I will focusing much on research experiences, how this critical self-reflection I frame in my research, and how those reflection help me to identify further about my further understanding and to make my my practices more better. So here, this is my attempt. So next, this is my attempt to, yeah, this is just one poem. I just use some time to think on this morning. So I just want to read it out, like personal narrative as a method, method as an expression, expression as a process. What are you planning to reflect? So penning, gaining local stories, dialogue, and role play to unfold narrative. Unfolding the narrative, unfolding the narrative, unfolding the narrative. So critical self-reflection as an evoking process. Connect the autobiographical and personal stories. Connect the autobiographical and personal stories. Connect the autobiographical and personal stories. So life stories, life stories, life stories to interact with each other. This is my just attempt. So its message is to how we could able to critically reflect on self. So while we are reflecting on self, what changes were made in your personal or professional career? So next slide, sir. Okay, while reflecting on the practice in autoethnographic inquiry, so as per my experience, this autoethnography examined personal and professional experiences. While conducting or representing autoethnography, this consideration raise a like ethical challenge for self and others. So here I reflect this term like autoethnography. I first encounter this emerging and ethically challenging methodology in 2013 as a MAD students. It was like in 2013 as an MAD in mathematics education students, and in that time this notion offered me some form of pedagogical vision of empowering mathematics teachers by creating room for professional improvement. So what I reflect on professional experiences using autoethnography as a research methodology through that dissertation. So you can also find that I just reflected on what sort of the relationship between teacher and mathematics teachers and students do have in existing classes. So and what might be the impact. So that was my my encounter in that particular method. So what I supposition, or what I developed while representing my dharma as well as karma, I use those to promote the existing practices to be more meaningful and learner-centered by offering the students active participation in learning. So while I reflect in brief, while I reflect as an critical as a critical reflective practice in autoethnography, so the process, so it begins from beginning of drafting the proposal to finalizing the proposal. We have to see each and every aspects. So what is being done, what are the best moments, what are the good memories, and what memories offer you to think further. So right, likewise, it is all about the process of generating the data. So there might be the multiple ways of knowing, and also we can use some various form of logic and genres while writing. And likewise, it also offers us to writing as a process of inquiry by representing our duty and our responsibility. And also we have to critically reflect on our theoretical refinement. And also when we accomplish these projects, also we have to be aware that what might be the further processes after completing the project. So this is in brief like what are my practices in this critical reflective practices. So with this, over to Balsan.
Thank you very much. Okay, before I start, why critical reflection, I would like all of us to post our thought in the chat box. Why do you think critical reflection is needed? You heard this presentation, so any of you, you might type in here. I think everyone can type, right? Can everyone has? Can everyone?
Yes, sir.
Get, okay, please. Any of you, I mean, all of you would be fine. Then I don't need to make presentation. Then I can just summarize those points. This would be a good escaping pedagogy. Somebody charged me some years back. I started by saying this. Then you are not teaching anything. Then you are just summarizing what we have just said. Anyway, so let's would it be possible? One sentence or one keyword, why critical reflection in postgraduate research? Okay, to improve method of instruction, understand the things from multiple dimensions. Thank you. Please go on. So I'll give you 3 minutes. I think I have some 2-3 minutes, right? To do that. I can indulge in some 2-3 minutes. Okay. Yeah, please. CR is important, but countering personal hegemony. Thank you, Peter. Accepting that researcher is imperfect, the ground reality of the human being. Okay. Thank you. I got my keyword, human being. What does it mean to be human? So I would start. I have just one slide, and I would start with. I try to explain. Okay. So Binodji, can you please take me to the next slide? Yes, further improvement, but what does it mean to be human? That's the question that I would like to, establish the very notion of why critical reflection in postgraduate research. The first point is that, you saw the presentation by Lily Taylor this morning. She actually recounted the history of needing moral, moral judgment in the time of crisis, in many time of crisis. So if we see the history of human evolution, humans can change themselves. This is, I mean, there is a mystery how people change, how humans change, but they change themselves. Number one, okay? So change is part of our life, and change can be worse. So we need to make the change better. We need to take the change in right direction. Change can go into wrong direction as well, okay? Change always need a qualifier, okay? Number two, they can change others. Yes, they can persuade, they can change others. And there is a propensity, there is a power within us, without us, that we can change others. Because we are teachers, we teach people, and we might teach in a wrong way, we might teach in a right way, quote unquote. And we persuade other, we communicate other. Habermas says that we separate from our ancestors, that we have speech, we have that power that we can communicate. So communication is the beginning of the change that we initiate. And the change makes us make visible. If the change is in a right direction, then of course, otherwise it makes visible impacts within and outside of us. So in our consciousness and in our action. So what I mean by within and outside of us is that within, in our consciousness, and this consciousness, the changed consciousness, or the consciousness simply can be seen or can be felt in our actions, okay? And then the change can be, yes, change can make, and then this can be possible. We also need heightened consciousness, and change entails, change is not linear. It requires a multidimensional and multi-paradigmatic process. And these are historically, if we see the references and writing in the Eastern, Western intellectual wisdom traditions, then change is not just linear. It has different dimensions. It can be multi-pronged, it can be multi-paradigmatic. And so one of the ways, if we look into the Eastern and Western traditions, Western intellectual tradition, thanks to Habermas, because I'm referring to Habermas from my keynote and even today. So ego turns into itself. So ego needs to turn into itself in order to understand the change and in order to become the change, as Gandhi says. If we want to see the change in the world, then we need to be the change. So how can we be the change? Then we need to turn our ego onto ourselves. So how can we do this? I think this is the one. I think this is a way. How ego, this means these three are ego. So ego is so powerful, it needs to turn to ourselves, and we need to recognize our ego. And of course, we need our one eye to the system, because system is also very, very powerful impending force for us. So we need to turn the ego into ourselves. And as far as our research is concerned, you presented, and Denzin wrote back in 2012, writing is data. So critical reflection itself is not just analysis, but also data. Okay, you mentioned many of your presentations showed that you have actually generated data by reflecting on your practice, by critiquing on your practice, by reflecting in the moment, by reflecting in the past, reflecting in the moment, and reflecting about the future. That would be an anticipatory reflection. Is Denzin, I think in 2012, he talks about this. The idea of critical reflection is data, is analysis. I use data in the quote. I forgot to mention quote unquote in data analysis, and of course cultivating agency, because this is where the power lies. If we are not able to understand our own agency, the possibility and limitation of our agency, we won't be able to use critical reflection in practice. So I just want to quote John Dewey. It's very important to engage students in practical experiential activities. But what is more important is to engage in reflection, and to engage in critical reflection. My emphasis, critical. because John Dewey didn't actually talk about critical, but talked about meaning making and reflection. Meaning making and reflection and dialogue. These are very important terms for John Dewey. Not just in, mechanical activities. Activity-based learning, teaching is very important, but it is less important if we, avoid engaging them in conversation, in dialogue, in critical reflection. So I think this is why we need critical reflection. Then we become human, as Habermas says, because we have that propensity to change others, propensity to communicate well, to propensity to facilitate critical self-reflection or transformation or the structural transformation. So that's what I have to say. I think this is what we engage in discussion. Probably Peter would like to add something. Probably other friends would like to add something. I come back to the conversation again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah, I would like to say something. In fact, I'd like to join in the spirit of this workshop by posing a critical reflective question. So what I've heard so far, and what I agree with, is that critical reflection is a good thing. Nobody has said the opposite. Everybody thinks it's a good thing, and people have provided lots of evidence of why it's a good thing. Now, let's use that as a starting point. And the question that I've got is, can there be too much of a good thing? We say that about things like sugar. We love sugar. Nobody disagrees with it, particularly children. Can there be too much of a good thing in terms of critical reflection? Now, maybe we'll put that in a context, because that's a very broad question. So consider you're doing your MEd, your MPhil, or your PhD studies, and maybe you're doing participant action research, and it's a critical participant action research, and you are engaged in critical reflection. So it's time bound, okay? You've got a couple of years of field work. If you had no time limits, and we were talking more generally, we could say that critical reflection is a good thing for your entire career. But come back to this time-bound situation, which all of you are in. And so the question is, can there be too much of a good thing? Can you be engaging in too much critical reflection? And how do you know what is enough? Those are my questions.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I think, my friends, can we be, okay, Professor Vishal Sitola, you are also asking something. So yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. I think Professor Bal and Peter, because of your presence, you made me to critically think around 4 o'clock in Norway in the morning. So that was a little bit challenge for me. But I am very closely listening to this presentation and in fact learning quite a bit. Sir, I just would like to ask another question, because you, Peter, also brought, and Bal sir also brought very interesting point here. I have a few reflection on myself, because first of all, use of that word critical, which doesn't sound very good to my ears, because word critical is used in the context of critically sick, and different kind of, severe kind of. So that is one thing. The other thing is that I think we should also learn from different wisdom tradition that this critical thinking has also some limitation and limit, as Peter was really pointing, when and how much to use. For example, in Tao or Dao, that kind of thinking, you have to flow with the nature, and nature do not think critically, nature do not put effort, but everything is accomplished in that particular context. Also, in our wisdom tradition, like Guru Gorakhnath says that Hasiva, Kheliva, Dhariva, Dhyanam. You can accomplish the thing, you can accomplish the highest state of understanding even taking it lightly and a little more playfully without engaging all the time with your critical thinking. In the Sufi tradition or other tradition, they also indicate that when love arrives, reason disappears. This reasoning disappears really. So having all this thing in mind, I think for me to use critical reflection, I also encourage my PhD and other students to use that one, but it has to be used as a skillful means for certain purpose. I mean, it is not that all universally, I mean, a kind of prescription. That is my kind of novice reflection here, but I would like to hear on my comment from both Bal sir and Peter sir and anybody else. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that very interesting.
Thank you. I would say I would reflect on that one as well, but I would like my friends, to say Binodji and Niroji and other Pritika ji and Ravina ji, Harsha ji. So what Peter is saying, and also Professor Vishal Sitola is also saying the same thing, that how can we always be engaged critically? Can we be critical all the time? That's the question, I think, Can there be limitation of critical reflective practices?
Yeah.
That's the question. Can there be other forms of reflective practice? So I think let's start with, let's discuss this one. Yeah. And
so
I have a take. Please.
Okay. Let me start discussions, because our two very senior Professor Peter and Professor Vishal have raised this question. So it is very difficult, that it is a kind of very difficult to respond this. But what I realized that so today's presentation is based on the frame of reference of this critical theory. So within this critical theory, with the agenda to transform ourselves researchers, and then to make some visible transformations in our field. So we have taken the ideas of critical reflections. So it's not about always raising questions to the self and raising questions to the others. It's all about being humble, what the Professor Vishal Sitola has said. So as per my understanding, so this humbleness, and then so being aware with the limitations is also a platform that critical theory provides, as per my understanding. So the next one is, so what I realized, that obviously it has limitations. If you do not sorry to use this word, whether it is correct or not, handle with care. So sometimes what happens is, Peter has said, if we become critical in each and every steps, so we have structures, we have mindset, so we have a kind of culture. So being critical all the time in a very systemic so place, and it is very challenging also. So sometimes I also felt, because even working in our own universities, so when I reflect back, so I used to think that I was too critical with my institutions few years back. So I used to raise questions in every meeting, and then I used to say that we need to do this and that. And what I realized, so when I came to the post, because I'm working as a department head as well, and then I see there are different limitations. So being in the post and being so outside the post, so is also makes difference. So I don't know whether it is making sense or not, because sometimes we have a structure, sometimes we have a lack of resources. So human resource one mindset. So I think all the time, so this critical reflections so may not work, but within the bigger framework of critical theories, so we took this as a reference. So one response from my side. So Balsar, over to you, or other friends might share something.
Other friends, do you want to say something about this? Any of you? The question here is it always good to be critical? What does it mean to be critical as well? That's the ontology of, being critical, or, our position of being critical. Good question, Peter and Vishal. So, Indramani, yes, please, Indramani sir, over to you. Very brief.
I have not started yet. Okay, so in my experience, what I have analyzed and interpreted regarding this critical thinking is that it is context dependent, number one, because of the cultural beingness or values. Sometimes what happens, we come back to our own status quo position. That's why sometimes this critical thinking or critical reflective practice becomes like a radical departure in our cultural practices in our context. Because I have also felt in that way, though we discuss about this matter to gradually raise questions with possible solutions. But what I have felt regarding myself as well as with my students, particularly in school level, that they fear of or they always hesitate to raise the questions because they still now think that the teachers and the school are at the topmost level. We have to respect them. Yeah. So I think that because of these all things, it is quite impossible or not possible to be critical reflective practitioner always because of this sort of cultural or contextual values. Thank you.
Oh, very interesting. Thanks very much, Indra.
Okay, any other, like Ravina ji and Pritika ji, do you want to say something? Have you faced similar questions?
Thank you, Peter, sir, for this enlightening question. And in my opinion, until you are surrounded by the hegemony, you need to be critical in order to break the wall of the hegemony. And once you are in a stage of your goal, then we stop being critical. But again, I think that time also at certain level, the goal itself become hegemony. So I don't know. It depends definitely, as Indra sir says, it depends upon context, but being critical on own practice is things that we should practice always. I don't know. With my limited knowledge, I can say only this. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay, Niro sir, do you want to say something very briefly?
Yeah, in brief, just I think I am very like the beginner to bring this concept in the discourse. Like, I think in some cases we must be critical, and in other cases we may not be. Like, being critical is always seeking for some solutions. So when we are being critical, we must have other form of thought. So what is the next? What is the next? So so to identify some form of the solution and to act on that particular solution, we must be critical. But being critical is not always questioning to the existing practices, but also it gives, it's offer us some form of the solution. So this is my short view.
Thanks very much, Niraj. Bob, I have a supplementary question.
Yeah.
When it's appropriate to ask it.
Yeah, please go ahead, Peter.
Okay.
I'm not responding each and every question, but I will, lay out my perspective. I'll lay out my perspective. Yeah.
Let's say I'm going to examine your thesis, your dissertation, and in your methodology section, you've said that you've engaged in critical self-reflection.
Yeah.
Now, how am I going to judge whether you've done it well enough?
What would be the quality standards? That's the question Peter is asking. So what would be the quality?
Not just this, what standards should I use? What quality standards should I use to judge the success of your so-called critical self-reflection? Yeah. And don't answer the question abstractly, but do it in relation to your own research, your own inquiry.
Yeah. What would be that? I mean, each of you might post or you might, yeah.
And I guess associated with the question is, what are the threats that
Yes.
militate against critical reflection?
Yeah. What would be the threats, I mean, of critical research paradigm? Even you can think of that one. Yes. What would be the threat? What would be the limitations? So that's, yeah, okay. Sometime ethical issues, okay, yeah. Even further than that. Invention, innovation, okay.
It's a question of evidence, isn't it, really? What
Yeah,
evidence
yeah.
do you produce
Yes,
that's going to
yes.
convince your examiner that you've done a good job of
Mhm.
engaging in critical reflection? Now,
Yeah.
again, in context, maybe you're doing participant action research, you're out in a school and you're trying to improve the teaching and learning situation.
Mhm, mhm.
So just in a brief, I think other friends have written in the chat. Peter, I just want to brief here because as you have asked that, what are the evidence in writing, so that as an external examiner, so you will be convinced that the researcher has used critical reflexivity. So one is that the basic assumptions of using critical reflexivity, that no one is perfect. No one's practice is perfect, no one's thinking is perfect, and then there is no best, there is always better alternatives of existing practices. So that means whatever we have been doing, so there are a lot of quote unquote failure events, or there are a lot of limiting practices, there are a lot of let's say narrow beliefs or disempowering beliefs. So if we are able to bring if the researcher has brought that aspects of his or her thinking, his or her practice, I think that is the one very major evidence that the researchers has used this critical reflexivity. So other one is that, as Professor Bal has said, when discussing the issues or problem, not only looking outward, not only looking to the system, not only looking to the law or already established ideas, but also looking to the self, because we are human and then we have capacity to change from our perspective. So if the self, let's say the self-critique, if the component of self-critique is there, because sometimes what happens whenever I read the thesis, so although researchers seems to have done the self-critique, but they are keeping themselves at the center and they are taking that, so this has been changed due to my leadership, or
Yes.
or I have brought changes in my institutions, as if only he or she has brought the changes. Yes, obviously there is a role, but acknowledging the contributions of others, because so I think if we are able to bring that in our writing, so perhaps you as an external examinations will be convinced.
Will.
Yeah, I always look for a limitation section toward the end of the thesis.
Yes.
This
Yeah,
is
yeah.
what I have failed to do perfectly.
Sure.
Or this is how I've avoided being a narcissist.
Yes, yes.
This is how I've avoided being a positivist. Although it's hard to not do those things, I've struggled with it, and I may have made some, less than perfect sort of judgment calls and practices. So those are the sort of things that's really nice as an examiner to be able to read, that critical self-reflection about doing the research.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
It's a meta leveling.
Yes, yes, yes. It's reflection, critical reflection of the research in itself. So not just, not just the practice outside of research, or not just the object of research, but research in itself. So, yeah. I think that is called critical reflexivity when we bring that into fore. Yeah. Can I say something? Can I say something?
Yeah, please, Bal, go ahead, right ahead.
I think, they are scared of your comments. They must have said, humility, and they have to challenge the, narcissism. They should be aware of narcissism. I think they have this, especially this, because one of the, this is a very difficult and very important question, because, I have this image somewhere here. I just want to use this visual metaphor, okay? So just this. What do you see, Peter?
Oh, I remember having this when I was last in Nepal. Very nice.
So I think, I mean, critical reflection cannot be everything. Probably one of these things, like probably it can be dal, lentil, or it can be like this. Although I'm vegetarian now, there is meat as well, or something like that.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, we in relation to what, in context of what. So this is very, very important. So it cannot offer everything. Number one. Number two, but again, if we are to think about transformation, if we are to think about critical ontology, or the ontology of change, then probably criticalism or critical reflection is one of the foundation block. Of course, there are other blocks, such as, like arts can be other things, something like, wisdom traditions can be there. Like Professor Bisal Sitola mentioned that Gorakhnath has said something, Tao has said something, and also, Thomas Augustine has said something, or so we might, this is probably the beginning one. So we try to see the gap so that we embark on other ways of knowing. So Michael Polanyi talks about post-critical thinking, and in that he says, he accepts one thing is that criticality is the beginning, is not the end, but the beginning, is not the outcome, is the tool. So outcome is something else, So I think that's what I need to say. What I bring this plate here, probably we apply eclecticism. We use eclecticism. That's the term I use. But again, we need to start from critical. We need to be critical because that is the basis of eclecticism.
Yeah.
That shows the possibility or the requirement, not just possibility, requirement of using not just one method, not just critical pedagogy all the time. Even within critical pedagogy, there is a diversity of pedagogical perspectives, pedagogical models. So that's one. And Buddha used, you should be critical, but first you should be compassionate. So once you become compassionate, and then you start having a dialogue and becoming critical, pushing the other person, pushing the agent further and further. So even if you, even in one of the Jataka stories, Buddha said that, to his disciple, he persuaded him to stop miracles, doing miracles, because Buddha was a miraculous person. But what he did, he stopped doing miracle, becoming very ordinary. But one of his disciples knew that Buddha was miraculous, and then Buddha could do miracle, and then he wanted to learn those miracles. Those siddhis, what they call siddhis, and so that siddhis help them to do miracle. But Buddha insisted, saying that, Buddha became so compassionate of his limited understanding of his spirituality, limited understanding of what he call liberation. So then it took a long time, probably a month, and then he started deconstructing his very limited beliefs. So probably it's a matter of skill as well, how you become critical, how you invite the other, because, when you become critical of the system, critical of the other person, critical of the other as well, not just yourself. Although you have this, but they are connected, self and other are connected. So I think we need skills there.
Indeed.
And pretty much because I don't know much about men, but most of these female researchers, my students and my colleagues, they are more skillful than me. So in becoming critical. So I hope, they have.
One of the things I was really impressed with Pabati's thesis is that she really practiced humility. And that really, I think, is a good feminine trait that all men should also be employing.
Yes.
One of the things I really enjoy is a sense of humor, and the Dalai Lama is an expert at doing so. He will engage in critical discourse and laugh all the time.
But this humor is sometimes also contagious, is contagious in a negative sense. In one of the meetings, I said that, in the time of such and such dean, I would be asked to do signature of my presence, but now I am the dean and asking the same person to do and then the other person became so sensitive, then came to me after the meeting. It was simple. So it depends upon the situation and context, whether your humor is working or not. Yes, Professor Sitole.
From my lived experience, one of the problems, and I'll stop talking after this and give Vishal a go. One of the problems is that the angry young man syndrome, which is very much the Western outlook on life. When you're displeased with the system, you're displeased with your own circumstances, you get angry. And then you use criticism, even critical reflection as a weapon. And I think we really must avoid doing that.
Yes. Very true. Very true. Yeah. This hubris attitude and sort of intolerant perspectives. Now, I think we come to the end of our session. So if anyone, thank you.
I think we have to go to the next session, sir, now.
Okay, thank you.